hard can the South cram it? This is our South Cram-O-Meter that we didn't get into last week because we ran out of time. We each must come up with a final rating of 1 to 1,000 on how hard the South can cram it this week. No decimals. That's why we go to 1,000. So you can't have 867.31.
Okay.
1,000 is cram it so hard. 1 is cram it not at all. I feel like I'm reading the instructions for the SAT. Auburn, as a 10 or 11 point favorite, lost to Cal. Alabama only led South Florida 14-13 entering the fourth quarter. Oklahoma, the team that I picked to have the Heisman winner and make the playoff, got outgained by Houston and won 16-12. I will accept 787. I'll go 843.
Dog Nation, I think, had an article that said, like, takeaways from Georgia's win in Kentucky. And, like, the first takeaway was just, how good of a coach is Kirby Smart to get the boys to a place where they can really pull out that win in Lexington. I was like, okay, all right. Enough of that.
Man, it takes a lot out of you to flex your resiliency. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Been flexing my resilience. So the reason we're making fun of flexing resiliency is because that was a phrase in a headline that was on ESPN.com.
Yeah.
About Georgia flexing its resiliency, which we noted. If you hear anyone else talking about a South Cram-O-Meter, please tell us because we have trademarked this. I'm at a 931 for the Cram-O-Meter this week. And a chunk of it is because Missouri almost lost to Vanderbilt. In that game, the game went to overtime, and it was decided by Vanderbilt missing a field goal in the second overtime after Missouri had made its field goal. But Missouri had missed 3 field goals in regulation. Missouri was 3 of 6 on field goals on the day, and Vandy was 2 of 4. So in a game where you combine to go 5 of 10 on your field goals, and the team that is viewed as the worst team in the league takes a team that everybody has picked for the playoff into overtime, you can cram it on that. Do people think I'm doing a bit with this, Landis?
Yes.
Okay. Like, it's not a bit. It's real. I acknowledge the South plays good football, but like all of the pushing against the perception is, I think, real and necessary. And these are times like it. And the idea, it's not that Alabama, Georgia wasn't a great college football game, but the idea that, like, well, those are the 2 best teams. That's it. That you are in a bubble and that you don't allow yourself, like, what about Texas? What about Ohio State? What about the Penn State win? What about Oregon when it gets together like that? But no. I was in that stadium and I'm telling you, those are the 2 best teams because of recruiting rankings. And there are mistakes in that game. Like, so it's not a bit. If your takeaway from Georgia, Alabama is that's definitely the national championship game, you are stupid. And either you're doing a bit or you are stupid. So what's your South Cram-O-Meter, Landis?
It's 1,000. Because I think we should be able to separate like great games and great teams, right? Like that was objectively a great college football game. One of the most entertaining games that's been played like in recent memory. So like I have no problem with people characterizing that game as that. But it does not mean that it was a game between 2 of the best team or the 2 best teams in the country, right? Like the reason it was so entertaining is because both of those teams have flaws. So celebrate the game, but I don't think you have to crown the teams as necessarily coming out of it. So that's why I'm at 1,000.
Yeah. Theory. The South can cram it. Evidence. Vanderbilt beat Alabama. Conclusion. The South can cram it. That's football science on KOTN. Burning. The South is burning. So I'm at 1,500.
We do need to increase the scale because I'm at 1,873 because that's the year that Vanderbilt was founded as a university, 1873.
Oh, it's going to be so good. The trademark's going to be so good. Once we trademark it, then we can make one. So now we're going to cram it this week based on Kirby Smart shoving a Mississippi State player. Hey, my name's Kirby. I just want to say hello. I'm sorry. I accidentally shook your hand with my hand into your shoulder. So I am filled with white hot rage. I am paid to coach football and help shape the minds of young men, just not guys on the other team. And by the way, this makes me wish this player had shoved Kirby back. I'm at 2,000. So we thought we were like maximizing it, right?
Yeah.
All like Alabama and Tennessee losing the same day. The ridiculous reaction to the Alabama Georgia game, like Ole Miss loses to Kentucky, all this crazy stuff. we've already broken it. It's 1 to 1,000. It's 1 to 1,000. But I don't know what you do when a head coach shoves an opposing player. What are you supposed to do? 2,000.
Okay, I don't want to throw off the math for the rest of the show because I kind of want to make it 13 million because that's actually how much Kirby Smart makes.
Oh, but you're allowed to.
Okay.
We'll just have to. Mike is going to have to fit it in the graphic. And in week 7, it was whatever's going to be 6.7 million because that was 2,000 plus 13 million divided by 2. So
it looks here like the salary of the president of the University of Georgia is 916,729. So that'll be my cram meter. I was actually ready to give a reasonable cram score of like somewhere in the 900s, but like less than 1,000 because Georgia won a big game, and we do have to acknowledge that result, as you said. And then the people in Athens opened their mouth again. So.
Auburn, Kentucky. Remember when everybody wanted to tell us that Kentucky was good because they only lost to Georgia by 1 and then beat Ole Miss? Kentucky blows. They lost to Auburn 24-10, and they're 3-5.
I've been pushing the theoretical limits of crammage the last couple of weeks with some of my scores. So I'm going to be a very reasonable within the initial guidelines 903 on the cram-o-meter.
Oh, you're like an astronaut. I'm going to call you a cramstronaut. Because you push the theoretical limits of crammage every week. You go where no man has gone before in the pursuit of crammage.
That's right.
Cramstronaut Bill Landis, you are a great American, sir. I'm going to say 400. And I think that's going to give us still all of that. I got myself riled up, but I mean, compared to shoving guys and Tennessee and Alabama losing the same weekend and all the sanctimonious blowhard tomfoolery those ding-dongs take part in every week, how hard can the South cram it? Clemson lost, and Clemson lost.
Yeah, Clemson was almost a bigger deal to me. Factored greatly into my cram score. Also, we don't talk about Southern G5 teams, but Louisiana Monroe's offensive line coach lost his mind and ran onto the field and then shoved a player on the sideline. So I include that in my rankings as well, or my cram meter as well. But here's what I did. I like to be creative. I like to tie it to things that may have happened over the course of the weekend.
Yeah.
So my cram-o-meter this week is I'm dialing it up to 80,466 because that's how many people were watching Clemson lose to Louisville on Saturday.
I love you like a brother. I love you most during the cram-o-meter. Cram-o-meter Landis is my favorite Landis. Coming off a weekend Landis where number 3 Georgia and number 4 Miami both lost, but we covered that extensively on Saturday night. The thing that I am feeling the crammiest about for the South right now is everybody putting out there, what if there's a 7-way tie at 2 losses in the SEC? Will the SEC get 14 teams in the playoff? Watch out, Indiana, because we can't decide between LSU, Texas A&M, Missouri, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, all these like mediocre, terrible losses on the resume teams, and somehow that means the SEC should get a bunch of teams in over Indiana. That is what has me feeling quite crammy here on a Monday.
2.1 million because that is the made up NIL evaluation on 3 for Cam Ward, the Miami quarterback.
Oh, yeah. So you could just make a business out of making stuff up, right? So I am incredibly frustrated with national and Southern media right now and the way they are handling all this stuff. But Georgia is not the villain here. The villain is the discussion that is based off a Georgia reality that becomes a myth when applied to Texas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Alabama. 500,000. What's your number?
My number is I forget he's gonna be common 500,000. 5,500 because I just tacked 2 zeros onto the end of 55, which we all know is a very cold temperature. If you're outside and exposed to that for like 3.5 hours, like you're gonna get frostbite. So you gotta be careful. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good because it was 55 degrees and the Tennessee players were sitting on a heated bench. I definitely saw people on social media who were like, guys like to stay loose. And it was like, oh my God. Georgia, has losses to 2 3-loss teams. Tennessee has a loss to a 5-loss team. Texas A&M has a loss to a 3-loss team and a 6-loss team. Alabama has losses to 2 5-loss teams. Ole Miss has a loss to a 4-loss team, a 5-loss team, and a 7-loss team. May we enter those facts into the record? Can we get, did the court reporter get that down?
Mm-hmm.
Josh, did you get that? Did Josh get that? Facts hurt, Bill, and facts hurt feelings.
They do.
How hard is this cram gonna hurt? The Landis cram. How hard you cramming this week on a scale of 1 to 1,000?
The last available salary information that I could find for Greg Sankey was $3.7 million that he earned in 2022. So we're going to go ahead and crank up the Cram-O-Meter to $3.7 million.
So I think maybe the best cramming was done then on Twitter by Northern King Brett Bielema, who crammed it on Lane Kiffin in a very, very public fashion, right? So do you have a handle on this, Landis? Like Lane Kiffin basically tweeted out. Did he tweet out an explanation for why Ole Miss should make the playoff?
Yeah, I think it was like a Facebook post or maybe like a Reddit post where somebody laid out that Alabama and Ole Miss had beaten South Carolina, so South Carolina should be removed from the conversation. And then they were doing math about how much Ole Miss had won by in its games and how much and lost by, like the score differential in those games, totally ignoring whatever the losses actually were, like ignoring losing to Kentucky, for instance. Yeah, it wasn't a particularly compelling argument that Lane Kiffin was trying to get out there on behalf of Ole Miss making the playoff.
And then Brett Bielema got on Twitter and stuffed him in a trash can, right?
Mm-hmm. He sure did.
So Brett Bielema, this is the greatest beginning of this tweet. So like Lane Kiffin lays out this whole point about like strength of schedule and what your wins and losses are. And Brett Bielema begins with, "I couldn't agree more, Lane Kiffin," which is great. Like, great point, except the point you're making makes more sense for my team than your team. Mm-hmm. Brett continues, "Here's a thought for the CFB playoff. Ole Miss, number 31 strength of schedule, and has 3 losses to unranked Kentucky, Florida, and 8-4 at LSU. Illinois has number 30 strength of schedule, so better than Ole Miss, and has 3 losses to number 1 Oregon, number 4 Penn State, and a 1-possession game to Minnesota. How about we just take the 12 best teams and see where it goes?" And we would like to welcome our first official contestant to Troll, Honk, or Moron. It is Alabama Athletic Director Greg Byrne, who at least is paid to be a honk, right? Mm-hmm. That's in your description. Now, I hope you're not a moron if you're the athletic director of one of the largest, most important athletic departments in the country. But this dude put out a statement on Twitter talking about how Alabama maybe won't schedule tough non-conference games in the future, and that will be bad for college football, based on the fact that schedule strength doesn't matter. And he got community noted on Twitter.
Sure did.
I don't know, like, what does Twitter still? I didn't even know Twitter still did community notes. And they were like, okay, there's a lot of crazy stuff that gets said on Twitter, but this is too far. Pretending that Alabama didn't make the playoff because they scheduled in the non-conference too difficultly. Like, it is wild. And this continued. This was like a huge discussion point among the whiny Bill. There's a great friend on Twitter who said, like, "Doug, how did you not know this before?" But it was a revelation for me how whiny Alabama fans, media, and administrators were about this. They have gotten every edge in college football in the modern era, most of them earned. But here's the thing, and I'm very happy with just like looking back. So we don't only look back on the things that we say that are right, but we look back on them more. And I did happen to tweet out our outrageous predictions show when I said Alabama will beat Georgia and miss the playoff, nailed it, and tweeted out when you said the Big Ten will get more playoff spots than the SEC, and the SEC will only get 3, and you couldn't have nailed it anymore. And again, you might have been the only person in the country saying that at that time. Come on, man. Come on. That was a good show for us.
That was pretty good. I'm off. I'm wrong quite often, so I'll take that one. Yeah.
And week 14, Brett Bielema's face And Mike did it. Mike is killing it on the graphics today. Last week, we agreed that Brett Bielema did the cramming on our behalf, so we didn't need a Cram-O-Meter because he crammed Lane Kiffin in a trash can. And for perpetuity, anytime anyone goes back to the first year of the Cram-O-Meter and says, I wonder what the Cram-O-Meter was at week 14, the answer is Brett Bielema's face.
A smiling Bert.
Smiling Bert. So how hard can the South cram it this week? What's your number?
I actually consider doing a 0 as like a point to point out, I guess, how little their whining matters.
Oh, that would be,
yeah,
that would be, I get it.
Yeah. But I don't want to have to explain that every time people go back and check the record. So it's 2 million, which is roughly what Greg Byrne makes.
This is Finey the Elf.
Ooh,
this is my Finey the Elf costume. How hard should the South cram it this week, Bill? What's your rating?
Someone, I apologize, I'm terrible with names. But someone came up to me in the press box on Saturday night at Ohio Stadium, and here's what my life is now. I go to games, and then people ask me, "What's Doug gonna have for Paul Finebaum tonight on the show?" And I was like, "You know what he's gonna have for Paul Finebaum, or Lane Kiffin, or Kirby Smart, or whoever." And they said to me that the Cram-O-Meter needs to, I believe the number was 900 million. So I'm gonna go with that. We're gonna go 900 million, just short of $1 billion on the Southern Cram-O-Meter.
Okay. Was there any reasoning behind it, or other than it's just on its face, it should be 900 million, and we all know why?
Just on its face, but that was also before. That was before the game started. That was before. The Tennessee came up north and got its butt kicked.
I'm cramming it like 25. We're just people.
I was going to say, is this all leading to a cram of 0?
Just 25. Just like a little bit. I didn't wear my hat. I didn't bring a real sword. It's like we're just people, and then I'll go back to a guest bedroom in the Midwest and the North, and I'll be back to $500 million like it was last week. I feel like everybody after Notre Dame beat Georgia is now saying the things that we've been saying for 6 months.
I don't even know if people have yet to really process what's happened. We've been processing it since last year, but we were fully processed. No more processing happening over here. But I think the college football apparatus is still wrapping its mind around its new reality.
Perhaps our favorite week, Brett Bielema's head. Now we've been going a little wild, Landis. Week 15, 26 million. Week 16, 500 million. Week 17, we pulled it back to 23 because we're all people, and we didn't have to cram it because the sport spoke for itself. And then last week, we thought about dropping it back to 0, but instead we moved it up to 1 billion. So we were caught in between nothing or everything. We went with everything. So where do we go from here? And again, we are cramming based on their absence. They're not here. Yeah. We're going to their place. I do like that, as we talked about after the Ohio State-Texas game. I like the idea that we're the North going to their place 2 years after 2 Southern teams came to Indy. So I do think the location of the title game can affect the cramminess here, but where are you?
So I have 2 ideas. The first is, can we make it either, I guess it's 3 ideas, but there's 2 within one. Either Greg Sankey's face on a milk carton or the SEC logo on a milk carton that says have you seen this person or have you seen this conference?
Yeah. Okay. I like what you're bringing. So it's that. We like it, and it speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Bielema's face speaks for itself. SEC logo on a milk carton speaks for itself. Cram-O-Meter rating was the SEC logo on a milk carton.
Yeah.
How good do you feel about that today?
I feel great about it. I'm so glad we were able to execute it. I think it's fitting for the way this season has gone. So shout out to Mike for getting it done.
Shout out to Mike for getting it done. And so we are doing our final Cram-O-Meter of the season today. I am not here to cram it on the good people of Atlanta, Georgia, who are fans of all kinds of Southern teams, who are just lovely folk. But their football team still can cram it. So I have a suggestion that our final Cram-O-Meter of the season be 1,000. Because we said it was a 1 to 1,000 scale. The South has been so far up its own cram hole this year that it has forced us at times to go into the millions and the billions and a milk carton logo. Mm-hmm. But in the end, they have suffered enough. There are some fine folks down here, and so we can just max it out on what it was intended to be all along, which is in the final analysis, the South can cram it 1,000.